Here in Malta's ancient capital, Medina, we examined the newfound prosperity of these islands. There have been three phases of Malta's economic progress. The first in antiquity, when the Phoenicians established this capital as Malta. The second in the early modern period, when Malta was ruled by the Knights of the Order of St. John. And now, the platform of Malta as the smallest state in the European Union. We turn to Dr. Stephanie Fabry to examine why Malta, the smallest state, has the highest growth rate in the European Union. Stephanie, welcome to the Alex Salmond Show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Malta, the smallest state in the European Union, now has the fastest rate of growth in the whole of Europe. Why is that?
Yes, so basically, over the years, we managed to achieve high rates of economic growth, especially compared to other European countries. And this is despite our inherent disadvantages. So basically, Malta is small in terms of size. Our population is less than 500,000 people, and that means that we have a limited market, and we have the disadvantage of insularity. Apart from that, just to put you in context on the Maltese economy, we do not have any natural resources, so our main economic resource is people. So we are a service-based industry, and I believe that this is part of the sort of contribution to our exceptional economic growth. Services generate higher output per capita. Another reason why I believe we have achieved high rates of economic growth is due to the influx of foreign workers that we had over the past years. So our population increased by 15 times more compared to other European countries.
So you're not just the fastest growing, but a major contributor to that is relatively a very fast growing population.
Yeah.
Now that must place strains on the social infrastructure of Malta, as well as the economic success that Malta is enjoying.
Yes, so when it comes to economic success, you have the pros and the cons. The pros are the high growth per capita, more employment opportunities, and more investment opportunities. But the cons of the economic growth are, of course, the higher inflation, the environmental impact on society and on Malta in general, and of course, the levels of inequality tend to increase with economic growth.
Dr. Fabry, you are a policy-oriented economist in the Prime Minister's office before becoming an academic economist at the University of Malta. So at that time, in the Prime Minister Gonzi's office, just after accession to the European Union, after the joining the Euro, did they anticipate the rapid strides that the Maltese economy, was this planned for, or is it happen chance?
I think that success doesn't come easy, so it doesn't come without working hard for it. So it involved a lot of planning throughout the years. The previous government and the current government have worked endlessly to make sure that the Maltese economy grows in a sustainable way. And what I think that was very beneficial in terms of generating this economic growth is that politicians tended to see the economy in terms of ecosystems. So when planning, politicians looked at the banking relations, so not just at the economy, the banking relations, the human talent, the legislative frameworks required, and that has led to this sustainable planning has led to this growth. So I don't think it came without planning.
So the higher participation in the workforce, has that led to a very great increase in participation of women? And is there a much broader social spread of people who are economically active now?
Yes, of course we have a very high employment rate. In fact, the unemployment rate in Malta is one of the lowest rates in the European Union. And women are much more contributing to the economic growth. So there is an increase involvement of women in the working force, and this is thanks to the family-friendly measures that have come into force in the recent years, which allowed women to re-enter the labour market even after having children.
Now, Malta, since independence, or since becoming a republic, has had 2 women presidents. Have you thought yourself of entering public life, going into the hurly-burly of Maltese politics?
I'm enjoying my career at the moment. I love being an economist, I love being a lecturer. However, who knows, in the future I might consider it.
Well, I'll take that as a positive maybe. And thinking more generally, if you were still policy advising the government, would you be advising them to tackle some of the social inequalities which, as you rightly say, often accompany rapid spurts of economic growth?
Yes, in terms of inequality, I feel that one of the things that if I had to be a policy advisor, I would promote is the idea of tackling the issue of early school leaving. So Malta has one of the highest rate of early school leavers. Basically around 50% of students stop at secondary level, so they do not go into higher secondary. And I feel that targeting this issue could help us in tackling even further inequality. Having said this, when it comes to inequality, we are still below the EU average, so we are in a good position. But I feel that we can come to a better situation economically if we tackle the issue of early school leaving and more family-friendly measures to help women, not just women actually, families, re-enter the labour market more easily and feel comfortable to find a balance between work and life.
And Dr. Fabry, when you're lecturing and your students ask you, what is Malta's greatest economic asset? How do you answer that in a phrase?
Without any doubt, the people, them, the students, us, it's people.
Well, in order to toast the Maltese people, I've got great pleasure in presenting you with a quaich, which is Scots Gaelic for a loving cup. Well, as an economist, you'll well understand the drill. It's whiskey in the quaich, only Scotch whiskey.
Okay.
Doesn't work for anything else. And you pass it around, well, all your friends.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great pleasure.
Thanks, pleasure here.
Of course, economic success brings with it its own challenges. And the first is whether economic expansion is sustainable in this crowded island with rapid growth and population expansion. The second is, does economic progress throw out a wider disparity between the rich and the poor? And thirdly, the murder in 2017 of investigative journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia threw into sharp relief whether a flood of dirty money was in danger of undermining the political fabric of the Maltese Islands. Now, for rather more than 80 years, the sometimes turbulent history of this island has been charted by the Times of Malta, the predominant English language newspaper in Malta. It was bombed during World War II, its offices. It was firebombed in the late 1970s, but every single day, the Times of Malta has never missed a beat, never missed an issue. I'm delighted to be joined by the Editor-in-Chief, Herman Grech. Welcome to the Alex Salmond Show.
Thanks for the invitation.
So over that sometimes turbulent 80 years, with the Times of Malta being the voice of common sense and forward-looking direction for the island?
I'm not too sure, but I would like to say that, yes, we were on the right side of history where it comes to certain important decisions. Let me talk about at least my generation. You know, we fully backed EU membership when we had the referendum here in 2003, and that went in favor, and we eventually joined the EU. Back in the 70s and 80s, there were problems with two-party, almost political system here, and where there were a group of people linked with the Labour Party at the time that were nothing short of thugs who would not take any voices of dissent.
So hence your offices ended up burnt down.
Yes, in 1979. Well, what's interesting is that, of course, this was not a party-sanctioned, attack. It was just a group of thugs that, after a manifestation of the Labour Party in Valletta, where our offices used to be, they just stormed into our offices and started burning down the place, with the people still inside the building.
Well, but things are a bit quieter and a bit more peaceful now.
Oh, yes.
Maltese population has been rising quite sharply, and not just through the arrival of desperate refugees, the arrival of many people who are far from desperate and extremely wealthy. How is the indigenous population regard this influx of people from many nationalities but large bank balances?
It makes me a bit angry, actually, because I'm all for integration, and I have no problem with so many people living here. I mean, the latest number is that there are about 500,000 people living here. When in the 60s, there were 350,000. And in a small island like this, where we're practically falling over each other, you know, it's growing and growing. People are coming here because the economy is flying. I mean, we're talking about the highest rate of growth in Europe now.
So the smallest country in the European Union has the highest rate of economic growth in the European Union.
It is good. It's also bad because it's leading to our ruin, I think, because there's a certain limit to how much you can grow. Now, the one thing we can sell and we're proud of in this country is our history. There's a fantastic history, but it's being overshadowed by these ugly cement blocks, which we persist in building, all for the sake of growth and so many people coming to live here. And what's going to happen when the bubble bursts?
The arguments from the opposition and from newspapers, critics about corruption in government, is that another sign or byproduct of economic success? If there's a lot of money sloshing around in the system, is that would you put it down to that?
Look, there are several accusations of corruption which are very worrying, and we keep hearing this on a daily basis. The Panama Papers exposed certain senior people involved in some very dodgy business. And what happens is you get to a stage where now people are saying, okay, fine, those people are corrupt, but I still have money in my pocket. Which is quite a worrying thing to see in my own country.
Having said that, I mean, if you take a world index of civil liberties, Malta ranks very highly. I mean, Malta is up there in the top 20 in terms of efficiency of government, in terms of pluralism of the system, in terms of freedom of the press. So perhaps it's the many other countries in the world would envy the degree of freedom there is in Malta.
To a certain extent. Remember, since Daphne Caruana Galizia, the journalist, was killed, 2 years ago, things have changed here. So yes, there is the freedom of the press. We are free to report whatever we want, and I have no problem with that. The censorship comes in different ways. The censorship comes in me asking legitimate questions to the government and not getting any replies.
But isn't that what happens in most political systems? I mean, I've seen a parliamentary answer or two in my time, and very seldom did they yield the information.
It doesn't make it right, though, does it? I mean, sometimes I'm talking about issues where things are in the public interest, where there are clear issues of nepotism, about lack of accountability, and even, sometimes we're talking about serious issues. We asked the army here about a group of migrants reportedly approaching Malta and they're in distress, and we're being told, you've got the wrong information, or it's not true, while the NGOs are telling us, yes, there is a boat approaching Malta. Now I see that it's a very delicate political game we're playing. Okay, we're playing with people's lives around this side of Europe. Unfortunately, this reality we're living in nowadays, where you don't care about migrants' lives, provided we can get those populist votes.
Isn't that the job of a newspaper to
That's
expose,
what we are
shine
doing.
a light on these things?
That's what we are doing, and the one thing which makes me proud of being a journalist in Malta is that the independent press has taken a unique stand we're all pro-integration. I'm talking about the independent press here. And we really call out the government for any acts, including the blatant racism, which is growing on a daily basis here.
Would you say there was any possibility whatsoever of Malta following the old colonial power of Britain out of the exit door of the European Union?
No way. No, it's impossible. It would be stupid. I mean, I think Britain's stupid to walk out. This is, sometimes we tend to forget what the EU actually stands for with its many flaws. The fact that we haven't had a single war in Europe since the EU's inception is enough of a reason, especially in this day and age. I would still like to see certain things. I still think there are problems with countries like Hungary and even now with Italy, the way that there's right-wing rhetoric. But I think it would be impossible for any prime minister, at least in my lifetime, to say, let's walk out of the EU. It would be suicide.
Well, I can't tell everything about the next 80 years of the Times of Malta, but what I can do is present you with the Alex Salmond Quaich for appearing on the show. So you know the drill, Herman.
Yeah.
The whiskey and the Quaich, only Scotch, and then round the entire readership of the Times of Malta.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
sir. Here in Medina, the tourists are lapping up the delights of Malta's ancient capital. Now we ask modern-day politicians how they respond to the challenges posed by rapid economic growth and how they're going to consolidate Malta's platform as the European Union's smallest member state. And I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Byron Camilleri, who's the government whip in the Maltese Parliament. Byron, welcome to the Alex Salmond Show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, economic success brings with it challenges, perhaps not as great as the challenges of economic failure, but challenges nonetheless. But let's take these in turn. The environment, sustainability, I mean, Malta is a highly densely populated island and it has a rapidly increasing population and rapid economic development. Is that sustainable over the medium term?
I believe that the rise in population is highly related to the economic growth. But I'd rather be here discussing with you economic growth, the challenges of economic growth, rather than the challenges or problems created by recession or by deficit year after year, just as we had up until a few years ago. Before, in the 1950s and 1960s, the Maltese used to go and live abroad, to emigrate to the UK, to Australia, because they couldn't find a job here. Now other people are seeing Malta as the island of opportunities, so we have quite a difference there. With regards to sustainability, we are working on that. We are investing a lot in our infrastructure, both physical infrastructure and social infrastructure. For example, economic growth helps us to sustain pensions. We increased pensions year after year here in Malta. We increased financial assistance to people with disability. We introduced the free childcare. We increased the children allowance.
And are these social measures enough to address the growing income inequalities which often economic growth can be associated with?
I believe that we are on the right track. It doesn't mean that everything is perfect, but for example, if you look at the poverty statistics, you can see that poverty is decreasing year after year. So economic growth has helped us to sustain various measures to decrease poverty in Malta.
Now, obviously, economic success can also bring challenges to a political system because there's much more money about throughout the... And the Prime Minister has recently announced an inquiry into the circumstances surrounding the death of a prominent journalist, murder of a prominent journalist. Now, people have been charged with that offence. But more generally, what measures does the Maltese government intend to strengthen the fabric of democracy and the rule of law?
We took various measures. First of all, the killing of a journalist is condemnable, and currently there are 3 persons which are facing criminal accusations in court. We even invited the Venice Commission to come to Malta and give us their proposals. They gave us their proposals and we are implementing those proposals. We are engaging with the various institutions of the European Union. And thus we are creating the change that is required. We are implementing various measures to strengthen democracy and to strengthen our rule of law.
Now, as the smallest member state in the whole of the European Union, does that still allow you to have a distinctive contribution from Malta in that European canvas?
Yes, I believe we do. A few months ago, we had the presidency of the European Union, and we managed to change things. We managed to implement things, such as the mobile excise tax, which was charged when you travel to the European Union. When we look even at various other agreements, such as the migration agreement, we managed to take a leading role, and we find common ground with our neighbors, with Italy, with Greece, and we managed to be even successful and have a leading role in Europe.
Now, for most of that period, it was a fairly tight battle in Maltese politics between the Nationalist Party and the Labour Party. And now the Labour Party are very dominant. Now, as the government whip, does that political dominance bring problems, or are you quite happy you're not in a wafer-thin majority?
I'm very happy to have a majority because I know that the people trust us. We have the highest trust ever since elections were held since independence. So we are very glad. But we must keep working hard for it because you gain trust, not easily, but very hard. But it's easy to lose trust. So we must keep our feet on the ground. We must keep working. We must keep improving the people's lives. We must keep very humble and change for the better.
Now, way back, it was even at one time part of the Labour Party's programme to have Malta integrated with Britain, to have seats in the House of Commons. And then it chose the route of independence and being a republic within the Commonwealth. Is there any chance at all that people in Malta might want to follow the old colonial power of Britain out of the exit door of Europe?
I don't believe so. I don't want to. I want to stay in Europe.
Is there any regret in Malta that Britain has chosen that course, or do you just leave that to the politicians at Westminster?
I will leave that to our historians. But I'm gladly be part in the European Union.
Is there any role that you can see Malta playing as being a bridge between Britain and the rest of the European Union if indeed Brexit takes place?
Yes, I do. And I believe that our history connects us more. We feel at home in Britain, British feel at home here. The UK must still be our favorite partner.
So should I give new Prime Minister Johnson your phone number?
Yes.
Well, I don't know if you'll get a call from Boris Johnson, but what I can do...
I did meet him once.
Good. Well, next time you meet him, you can give him a drink from the Alex Salmond Quake. This is a loving cup in Scots Gaelic. You put whiskey, only Scotch whiskey.
Scotch.
Doesn't work with any other drink, in the Quake, and you pass it around all these government MPs to keep them in line.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you. Here in Castilia and Valletta, we continue our story of the progress of the Maltese economy beside the statue of Dom Mintoff, one of the architects of Maltese independence and Prime Minister when Malta became a republic in 1974. I'm now delighted to be joined by Cyrus Engela, the Prime Minister's advisor to the European Union. Cyrus, welcome to the Alex Salmond Show.
Thank you for having me.
When Malta, of course, chaired the European Council as one of the smallest countries of the 28 as it was then, that must have been even 6 months chairing must have demanded a huge effort of people like yourself, but the whole range of the political administrative governance of Malta must have been devoted to that huge task.
Look back at the presidency and seeing it from an objective perspective, if you see what other institutions say, what other member states say, that the Maltese presidency was one of the best presidencies in the terms of how many files we managed to close during our presidency, the relations that we had not only within the Council but with other institutions, so the European Parliament, for instance, and the European Commission. I think the fact that, this was interesting, I believe, the fact that our Prime Minister, our Deputy Prime Minister, our Finance Minister, were all members of the European Parliament before, led to a presidency which encompassed all institutions rather than having the Council against Parliament, as sometimes it is portrayed to be. We made that effort to have one European Union, 3 different institutions, but working together in tandem in order to achieve results.
This was in 2017. Tell me a bit about how did this have an impact on the people of Malta? I mean, the people say, "My goodness, we are now chairing Europe." But was this a bit like winning the European Cup, or perhaps even the Eurovision Song Contest?
I think Maltese people were proud. They were proud to see the different leaders, the different heads of state and government coming to Malta for 2 different summits in the span of 6 months. Seeing many other dignitaries from all across the globe coming to Malta, being the center of politics in Europe for those 6 months. That is maybe different to what we're used to because we're a small country at the periphery of the European Union, and for those months we were actually chairing this huge block of more than 500 million people, affecting the lives of each and every citizen in the European Union. And there I think you can see how much even a small member state gains by being a member of the European Union, in the sense that we used to be affected by laws that come out of the European Union.
But you worked in Scotland. How do you feel for a European nation like Scotland, which is clearly wants to be part of the European firmament in some way, but it's caught in this Brexit dilemma just now?
I spent 2 years in Scotland and I loved being among the Scottish people. I think we have so much in common as citizens in Malta and Scotland, as we have in common with all of the United Kingdom in reality. We share, as I said before, a common past. I do feel for the Scottish in their quest for independence, for instance, in their quest to have an independent Scotland and being a member of the European Union. Obviously, I'm not going to go into the internal politics of the United Kingdom. It is the dynamics are there are the systems and the ways to hold referenda, as we had in the past in Scotland.
I remember it.
I'm sure you do. I, for one, would love to see Scotland being a member of the European Union, as I would love the whole of the United Kingdom to be a member of the European Union. But I guess it is a matter that needs to be decided between the Scottish and the British in general in your own country.
We've spoken a bit about what the European Union has been able to give to Malta. What do you think that Malta has added to the European Union?
The voice of a very small country. I think that we need to move from a European Union of a one-size-fits-all mentality because not all member states are the same. So whilst we work together and agree together to move forward, but I believe that the voice of small member states must always be heard. And I think that what Malta brought in the European Union family, apart from the color, maybe the noise and our vibe, our Mediterranean energy, I think that we also managed to give an input for change at the moment as well. I see the past 6 years of my country as being the 6 years of change. So we went from a situation where we had not even divorce legislation 7 years ago. Today we have all the civil rights and liberties. We're a country that was like a fortress holding everyone off, trying to push people away, to a cosmopolitan country which is embracing the future. We speak of Malta being the blockchain island at the moment, the Malta of artificial intelligence, the Malta of medical cannabis, for instance, and the new sectors that are growing in our country. And we're living in a country which is very cosmopolitan at the moment, very multicultural, and I think that that is the way forward. And that is what we're trying to give to the European Union today as well. We're very small, but we're very determined. We want to move forward. We want to see not only us as a member state moving forward, but we want the whole European Union to move forward into a more progressive and a more social European Union. And I think that is our passion, social politics. You know, apart from being a small country, we're a country that has no natural resources at all. Our only resource are the Maltese people. And I think that a government that invests in its people is a government that brings the best out of its people. And that is what we're experiencing in the past 6 years. We are the second country in Europe, for instance, to lower the age of voting to 16. And in the elections last May, we had 16-year-olds voting for the first time and 16-year-olds putting their name up for election. And we have now a number of deputy mayors, councillors all across the country who are only 16 and 17-year-old. And that shows the trust that the Prime Minister has, the government has, and the Labour Party has in young people.
Cyrus, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Coming up on next week's show, I speak to Dr. Emanuel Buttigieg of the University of Malta on the history of the Knights of St. John. Anthony D'Amato of D'Amato Records, the oldest record shop in the world. And entrepreneur Andrea Ambroli on the resurgence of Valletta. From Taz and me and all it's the show, it's goodbye for now.